had it all: unparalleled speed, a refined technique, and a killer instinct in the box. Aubameyang was synonymous with football magic, respected around the world, idolized by fans and feared by defenders, until everything started to fall apart. How does a world-class star go from hero to villain in a matter of months? What led Aubameyang to make decisions that almost ended his career? From its peak to its decline, what happened to Falcon Gabon? How did the immense talent that promised to transform each season into a spectacle become a succession of controversial choices and abrupt declines? What goes on in the head of a player who has a world at his feet and, in the blink of an eye, sees his career turn into a maze of bad decisions and emotional exhaustion? If you think the streets will never forget Aubameyang, like the video so it can be sent to more people. My name is Bruno, and let's go to another video. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang's path begins in the humble streets of Libreville, Gabon, where football was more than a game. It was a passion. Son of former football player Pierre Aubameyang, young Pierre didn't take long to show that talent ran through his veins. At 14 years old, he already dreamed of reaching the big stages of European football, but he knew the path would be arduous. His speed, his touch of the ball, and above all, his eye for goal were promising. It was at Saint-Étienne in Ligue 1 that Aubameyang began to dazzle the world. His professional debut, his goals, his agility, each move brought him closer to a great destiny. With each season, his name was consolidated as a promise in European football. In 2013, he finished the French championship as one of the main scorers and saw his name emerge among football's biggest stars. But Aubameyang knew he was destined for more. Borussia Dortmund, one of Germany's biggest clubs, soon became enchanted by his vibrant, bold style of play. At Borussia Dortmund, Aubameyang didn't just shine, he became an icon. Goals of all kinds. From outside the box, brilliant dribbles, first-time finishes. But it was his partnership with the team, his reading of the game, that took him to a new level. He was a reference, the player who turned every attack into a goal threat. Subscribe to the channel if you think Aubameyang's peak was at Borussia Dortmund. Aubameyang was now one of the fastest players in the world, one of the most feared. His ability to go from 0 to 100 in seconds, his reading of the game, and his ability to always be in the right place at the right time, he was a star on the rise. Arsenal, a Premier League giant, now had Aubameyang, and he was quick to justify their trust. In his first games, the Gabonese soon became the team's top scorer, and his goals became key elements in a season that rekindled the club's hopes. He was a new icon, the star that Arsenal needed. At Arsenal, Aubameyang became more than a goal scorer. He became the fans' hero. In every game, he gave his all. His Premier League legacy was being written with unforgettable goals and performances. He was a Gabon Falcon, unstoppable, tireless, a true monster of speed and technique. In my opinion, Aubameyang's peak was at Borussia Dortmund, but how can we forget that he carried Arsenal on his shoulders for a period, becoming the Premier League's top scorer in a season in a relatively average Arsenal season. During this period, he did what we see Cole Palmer doing at Chelsea today, managing to stand out among several Bagres. The world was at his feet. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang had fulfilled his mission to turn his dream into reality and become a legend. But like every star, his path was about to encounter new challenges, and not all heroes can maintain their position at the top. When the glow of glory begins to fade, the signs that something is not going well begin to become unmistakable. For Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, what seemed like an endless rise began to turn into an internal struggle. The first signs were there: disconcerting attitudes, behavioral failures, and an increasingly difficult relationship with his coaches. First delays, lack of commitment in training, sloppy behavior on and off the field. Aubameyang, the player who won the hearts of fans, now found himself in conflict with the very essence of football. The behavioral problems, however, did not go unnoticed. The relationship between Aubameyang and Mikel Arteta deteriorated day by day. Discipline, previously unquestionable, now became a battlefield. Arteta, new in charge of Arsenal, was beginning to show a ruthless side, and Aubameyang, used to being the team's hero, didn't understand how his place in the team was being questioned. Every mistake, every retaliation, pushed them further apart. And then the unthinkable happened. Aubameyang, the captain, loses his stripe. The player who was once a symbol of leadership and determination now found himself in limbo, far from the team and without the support of the technical command. The behind-the-scenes at Arsenal became a silent battlefield. Arguments between Aubameyang and Arteta were constant, and the wear and tear between them was visible. A manager determined to put the team above all else, and a player who felt he was being wronged. The rupture was not long in coming. Arsenal, without many options, decided to release him. Aubameyang, in his expression, conveys a mixture of relief and pain. He knows that this phase in London is over, but he still has faith that he can reinvent himself. Barcelona, a club in crisis, is betting on Aubameyang as a key to a new era. It was a chance to rebuild his career, to redeem itself in front of a new audience, with a challenge of taking the Catalans back to the top of European football. But soon reality begins to appear different. In his new team, Aubameyang does not have the same role. The matches are irregular, and he begins to feel the pressure of a club that, despite its history, is not experiencing its best moment. The speed, technique, and goals, which previously defined him, are not enough to regain the trust of the fans or the board. Barcelona, even with all its grandeur, did not bring the rebirth that Aubameyang expected. In a team that was going through profound changes and internal crises, he found himself once again removed from the spotlight. The star who once shone with intensity seemed to lose his shine, even though he had some glimpses of the star he once was. Who doesn't remember his 2 goals against Real Madrid at El Clasico in the middle of the Bernabeu in Barcelona's 4-0 victory? In Barcelona, what was supposed to be a recovery became more of a battle for survival. A lack of playing time and the arrival of new reinforcements for the attacking line put Aubameyang in an even more difficult position. His journey, which began with so much promise, seemed to be coming to an end. The decline of a star who seemed unbeatable. From global hero to a shadow of his former self, Aubameyang's trajectory had become an enigma. How did the once unbeatable player decide his own destiny, only to see it all unravel through poor choices and wear and tear with coaches and clubs? At 33 years old, with the weight of recent past and the scars of wrong choices, Aubameyang takes a new step in his journey. Chelsea, a club full of stars and with new ambitions, offers one last chance for a fresh start. But in a team full of talent and with pressure for immediate results, Aubameyang's adaptation would be more difficult than he imagined. At Chelsea, Aubameyang once again found himself in an environment of relentless competition. With the arrival of new reinforcements and the continuation of injuries, his adaptation to Tuchel's style of play was anything but smooth. The pace of play in the Premier League, his recent injuries, and the need to stay in shape for a team that would not hesitate to replace any player who was not 100%. All of this created a perfect storm for the Gabonese. He was no longer the Falcao de Gabello who made fans get out of their seats. Now, he needed to rediscover his confidence, adjust the collective game, and, above all, deal with the pressure of a club that doesn't give space to those who don't deliver their maximum. Recovery is not just physical. Aubameyang knew he needed to transform his mentality. He would need to go beyond sacrifices on the pitch. Changes in his personal life, redoubled focus on his diet and lifestyle. Everything was being reevaluated because he knew his last chance at Chelsea depended on it. Aubameyang's journey has not been easy. The falls, the frustrations, and the mistakes have all taken their toll on him. But with sacrifices, discipline, and a renewed desire to work, he has begun to rebuild his career. The question now is no longer whether he will be able to return, but when he will be at the top again. Recently, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has not Marseille Olympique, a traditional club, but far from the spotlight that made it famous on the biggest stages in Europe. Without the prominence of before, but with the experience that few players can claim, he walked quietly toward the end of his career. His time in Marseille, which is more discreet, is the last penultimate in a journey full of ups and downs. If, on the one hand, Aubameyang still holds the title of greatest scorer in the history of the Europa League on the other hand, he finds himself far from major competitions. Injuries, club changes, and personal challenges have taken their toll, and the player who once enchanted the world with his speed and technique is now in the twilight of his career. But no matter how much the stage has changed, Aubameyang remains a giant in European football. He is the greatest goal scorer in the history of the Europa League, an achievement that puts him alongside the greatest. But now, he faces the reality of the end of his career, and not with the same euphoria as before, but with the serene acceptance of someone who knows that every journey has its end. Today, Aubameyang is closer to retirement than new records. He was playing in the Al-Qadsiya from Saudi Arabia. The man decided to secure his nest egg for retirement. I don't judge. Many would, and do the same in the world of football. He played in some of the biggest leagues in the world, made history at clubs like Borussia Dortmund, Arsenal, and even Barcelona. But like all greats, he knows the end is coming. Maybe not with a Champions League title, nor would Gala fare well, but with the certainty that his legacy in football is indisputable. Aubameyang was the hero of a generation, the player who enchanted Europe with his dazzling speed, the claw of a lion, and the ability to decide games at crucial moments. But now he is part of history, not just as a top scorer, but as a figure who knew how to overcome his own decline, fight, and, above all, reinvent himself. The Gabon Falcao, the greatest goal scorer in the Europa League, is saying goodbye little by little. The end of his career seems imminent, but his legacy is eternal. Not just of goals, but for the story of overcoming, perseverance, and passion that he brought to football.